You know what time it is when you see me. You already know what time it is. Go sober up, sit down, you look like a mess.
It's useless. I tried with no event.
We're in a bear market. And if you don't believe me and you just want hopium and you don't respect yourself, go listen to them. But if you really respect yourself and your money, then this is the channel for you. We predicted every step of the way. There was no surprises here. No surprises in the previous bear market or the other bear market. The only surprises were that people lost money. We had an upthrust. We had a selling climax followed by a further distribution and an upthrust followed by more distribution and an upthrust. Right over here, I told you categorically to everyone in the room, you're not going to see higher prices. And so it materialized. We never saw higher prices. We're doing the same thing, ladies and gentlemen, that we done right over here. Now, if you look very carefully, even Ray Charles can see this. Let me show you on the 4 hourly candle. Between November 2025 all the way to around January 2026, we were in this pattern. As you can see, we were in this pattern, and then we formed a diagonal trend line, which is green. We bounced once, then we bounced again and again. We're doing the same thing that we've done right over here. There's a diagonal trend line spanning from here all the way to here. We bounced once over here, twice again, and 3 times again. Will it hold or will it break? The previous time we done the same thing. 1, 2, 3, and then finally we broke down. Most participants fail. Like 99.9% of you guys fail because you don't really know where we are in the cycle. Is this risk on or is it risk off? And I've made it very, very clear to you that we're right over here. We're right over here. What we done previously in 2022. We're doing the same thing that we done over here. Same thing. There's no surprises. Man, I'm bored of always being right. We're going to do the same thing. Will we get a wick or will we get massive selling pressure? That's what ultimately we have to find out. Let's see if these actual bulltards, these cowards, will ever step up. Let's see. Or maybe they just ran out of buying. They bought so much dip, buy this shitcoin dip. Maybe they don't even have any money anymore. Another way of gauging where we are in the cycle is looking at USDT dominance. Now, normally when the dominance goes up, that means more people are moving their crypto, their Bitcoin into stable coins. Then stable coins get destroyed because they move their stable coins to the bank. Right now, we're currently sitting at 8.054. Last time, the very peak was at 9.42. However, if we really zoom into the granular level, we'll find another picture. Now, often what happens with USDT is an inverse relationship. If you look very closely right over here, remember we formed that pattern. We formed an upthrust right over here, and what happened to USDT? It went up. Likewise, we're forming the same pattern. Remember that upthrust in this current distribution pattern? Remember, we're doing the same thing. Now, normally when USD heads down and forms a falling wedge, that, ladies and gentlemen, is actually bullish. Now we're forming a wedge right over here, which is bullish for USDT, but it's bearish for Bitcoin. And we've broken out, and we're probably going to head up higher to these higher ranges. We haven't even got to 9.4, ladies and gentlemen. The last time we got to 9.4, Bitcoin was at a whopping 16,000 US dollars. If you look very closely, ladies and gentlemen, don't get scared by all the lines and the chart. Is very easy to read. I promise you, very, very easy. At the very top was 69,000 US dollars. I've placed a price range, and that lasted 363 days. till the very bottom. On my left is 2026, on my right is 2022 bear market. Nothing has changed. I know most of you are driving yourselves mad. You're all driving yourselves mad. This is a dead cat bounce in 2026. This is a dead cat bounce in the previous market. Nothing has changed, ladies and gentlemen. We formed an upthrust right over here. Likewise, in the previous bear market, an upthrust. We headed down, selling pressure. We headed down again, found selling pressure. We formed another upthrust. We headed into this diagonal line, headed into this diagonal line. I can't make this up. It looks exactly the same. It's just pattern recognition. I could do the same thing that I'd done previously. Whichever way you want to skin a cat, ladies and gentlemen, whichever way. It bounced, and then it finally broke down. Once it broke down, this was selling pressure. In my previous episode, I even told you that we're going to bounce. We actually bounced all the way up to 69,000, almost to 70,000 US dollars. And then I said to you, we're heading down, and that's what we done exactly. Now, fractals, they don't have to play out exactly. A fractal is just a skeleton. It's our job to put the anatomy, to put the body parts on, to put everything on top. This is just a skeleton. We're going to break. Once we break this trend line, we're going to head down lower. It's important to see how the market makers react at these levels. If for some reason we have a small wick and a small capitulation, then I'm gonna have to move on to the next stage, and the next stage is this right over here. This is the next stage where we head up higher. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we can't get stuck in one place. If we do not see a massive capitulation, then we have to move on to this period right over here. We also have more in Q4. You are all aware I've been shorting for a very long time, from 97,000 US dollars, and they were all telling me, close your short. What are you doing? Close your short. And you know what? I doubled down. I want to see blood on the streets, and I certainly want to see these bulltards heads on a stick. History always repeats, and the one thing we definitely always do is we never ever learn from our mistakes. Never. This is this current bear market. Yes, I said it's the bear market for S&P 500. I gave you the peak at top for the S&P 500. This is the beginning stage of the bear market. This, ladies and gentlemen, is 2022. We had something similar play out. We had an Adam and Eve in both the structures. An Adam and Eve pattern is very basic. Even Ray Charles can see this. This is an Adam and Eve, and we're doing the same thing that we're doing right over here. We had a point right over here, then a curvature point. We had a point over here and a curvature. Now, fractals are not 100%, but it kind of gives you a direction. This right here in 2026 was the beginning of the Iran war, and Trump called it Operation Epic Fury. And this was the Russia and Ukraine war. And it started, believe it or not, started on the 24th of February 2022. And Iran, 4 days later and 4 years later, was February the 28th. 4 days later. The war started right over here in 2022. We went up and then headed down, formed a double bottom, and then finally we had an epic bear market rally. We're going to do the same thing, ladies and gentlemen. I'm looking for prices to head down, form a double bottom right over here, and then finally get every bulltard trapped. Ethereum is doing exactly like I predicted. Previous cycle, doing the same thing, up thrust. Then we headed into this pattern right over here. This was distribution. Same thing happened over here, distribution. We headed into this diagonal trend line. Likewise, we headed into this diagonal trend line. This was a beautiful trade for us right over here. We headed all the way down here, and currently we're just trending sideways. We had a slight deviation and up thrust, got everyone super excited, calling bottoms, and everyone was rug pulled. Beautiful. That would have been a beautiful short. I didn't get into that trade. However, now we're moving sideways, just like here. We're back on schedule. This is what I love to see. We're going to retest the lower end of this range and then finally get our capitulation moment. This is pivotal. We're going to see what the coward bulltards are going to do. Will they step in, or have they just completely ran out of money? Solana was extremely easy to read, extremely easy, ladies and gentlemen. In the previous cycle, right over here, we had an head and shoulders. We had an elongated head and shoulders distribution for many years, almost 2 years, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing the same thing that we've done over here. Look very carefully. All the way here, ladies and gentlemen, we had a massive upthrust. I did think Solana will go slightly more higher, at least to 114. That never happened. More distribution, more selling pressure. We're just doing the same thing here, guys. I'm looking for selling climax right over here, and then that's it. Solana will be extinct. You won't hear about it in the next cycle. I got to speak about this really quickly for someone on the chat. Someone wanted me to mention this coin. It looks like garbage, dog shit squared. Looks terrible, guys. Terrible. Why would you want to buy a heartbeat monitor? Like, why would you want to buy this? It's just terrible. If you compare it to Bitcoin, it probably looks even worse. It looks terrible, guys. You don't touch this trash. If I was you, I'd buy something else. If you really want to know, join our inner circle.